Welcome to the House of Truth. Today we're continuing our series on the Acts of Moses. And last time we talked about revenge on Midian, how Midian was involved in perhaps even the chief instigator behind behind the instead of Baal Peor, getting the children of Israel to worship Baal, and God sending a plague to destroy him. The 24,000 died in, kind of paralleling until it was stopped by Phineas killing two of the instigators. Were just right in the face, and starting to kill them as God start the killing of these people as God had said to do. Paralleling in many ways what happened at Mount Sinai with the golden calf incident. Well, this today we're so now that that's been taken care of. Today we're going to talk about the Eastern Promised Land. What's going to become of it? They've already they've already conquered it for the most part when they took revenge of the Ammonites. When they brought judgment on the Amorites. So we begin here in Numbers 32 verses 1 through 5. Now the children of Reuben and the children of Gad had a very great multitude of cattle. When they saw the land of Jazer and the land of Gilead, and behold, the place was for cattle. And the children of Israel of Gad, and the children of Reuben came and spoke unto Moses and to Eleazar the priest, to the prince of the congregation, saying, Adaroth and Dibon and Jazer and Nimrah and Heshbon and Eliah and Shebam and Nebo and Beon, even the country which the Lord smote before the congregation of Israel, is a land for cattle, and your servants have cattle. Therefore we have not gone. Therefore, they said, if we have found gracious land, let this land be given your servants possession, and bring us not over Jordan. Okay, so what? So they're talking about this area around here, and they're saying this whole area stretching here from the Arnon River up here to the Yamak River primarily, and perhaps even up a little up here. And they're saying it's great for livestock. Remember, when you see the word cattle in King James Bible, it means it's Old English for livestock. What we think of cattle today, they'll say beeves, as we saw last week. So they got these sheep, cattle, and goats, and perhaps of course horses and donkeys and camels as well. And this land over there, they're saying, is wonderful for raising these things. So therefore, we want to stay on the east side of the Jordan River. Now, if you remember, the promised land that was promised to Abraham was much larger than the promised land promised to Israel, that is to say, Jacob. That was promised to Abraham included all. Abraham gave parts of that away. He gave the Lot's descendants. Gave to Lot. He gave to Lot, and then Lot gave to his descendants a lot of this land east of the Jordan River that we saw. Let's say from the middle of the Jordan down to the bottom, over the Jordan Valley there, over at one time. He gave the land of Edom. I mean, he gave the land of Ishmael land. Midian, who came through his wife Keturah, and 7 of his brothers, he gave land as well. And then when Isaac came along, he gave of what was left, if you would, the promised land to Isaac. He gave roughly a third of it to Esau, because Esau sort of his birthright, not have the double portion. And he got over there again, south of Moab, to the east as well. And the remainder was what was promised to Jacob. And about 2/3 is west of the Jordan River, and about 1/3 east. And they pretty much have conquered all that very quickly when the judgment of the Amorites came in the Malach Adonai, the angel of the Lord went before them, destroying, and they kind of mopping up behind. So they look at this land. It's part of the it's the Eastern Promised Land, and they could it could fall to their lot to get it anyways, but they like it and they just want to stay on this side. But Moses has a concern about this plan, and we're gonna look at that here in the beginning of that concern here in Deuteronomy 32 verses 6 through 9. And Moses said to the children of Gad, the children of Reuben, shall your brethren go to war, and shall you sit here? Wherefore the discourage you the heart of the children of Israel from going over into the land which the Lord has given them. Thus did your fathers, they went to Kadesh Barnea to see the land. And they went to the valley of Eshcol, so the land discouraged are the children of Israel. They should not go into the land which the Lord had given them. Okay, so Moses is saying, if you just sit here, you're gonna let them, they already did some of the fighting to get the land on the east side. And if you just sit here, you're going to discourage them, just like what happened at Kadesh Barnea with the report of the 10 scouts who gave an evil report. They'll be discouraged, and they're not going to go into the land. And Moses continues on about the Lord's reaction to that. And the Lord, in Numbers 32, we continue on, number here is 32 in verses 10 through 15. The Lord's anger was kindled at the same time. He swears, saying, surely none of them, the men that came up out of Egypt from 20 years old and upward, shall see the land which I swear unto Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, because they have not wholly followed me. Save Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, and Joshua, the son of Nun, for they have wholly followed the Lord. And the Lord's anger was kindled against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness 40 years, until all the generation that an evil in the sight of the Lord was consumed. And behold, you've risen up in your father's stead, and increased the simple men to augment yet the fierce anger of the Lord towards Israel. For if you turn away from him, he will again leave them in the wilderness, he shall destroy all this people. Well, Moses is reminding him of how this happened. He's saying this augment. He's saying, like father, like son. You didn't learn nothing from the previous generation, and if you turn away from him like this and don't do this, your generation is going to die in the wilderness just like the previous one. And God can do this all day, as the saying is. He'll bring up another generation to go in, but you're going to die in the wilderness just like the previous generation did. So Moses is very concerned about their plan here, and but he's making a little bit of a error, because he's making an assumption that the reason they want to do that they don't want to go help their brothers fight. Now we're going to look at their reactions, see if that assumption is valid or not. Here in Numbers 32 verses, we continue on verse 16 and 19, read the following. And they came near him and said, we will build sheepfolds here for our cattle and cities for our little ones, but we ourselves will go ready armed before the children of Israel until we have brought them into their place, and our little ones shall dwell in the fenced cities because of the inhabitants of the land. We will not return into our houses to the children of Israel have inherited every man his inheritance. We will not inherit them on yonder side Jordan or forward, because our inheritance falls on this side of Jordan eastward. Okay, so what they're saying here to Moses, is that we notice we'll go armed before the children of Israel. We'll take point, is what they would say. People would say in the military, in the army, or anything like that. Be the ones at the very front of they're willing to be in the front of everyone else and lead them. and be first and be at the front of the attack and going over there. They just Moses has made an assumption that's just not true. And we can do that too. So we need to be careful. Yes, bring up objections, and like perhaps Moses did, of what maybe we think their intentions are, without being necessarily accusatory, and give them, and then we listen like Moses did to see if what if what we were concerned about was valid or not. In this case, in this particular case, it wasn't valid. They will go over there and stay until the land on that side is divided between the tribes over there. They just want the land on the east side. It's part of the promised land. It's again roughly a third of it or so is east of the Jordan River, and they just want to stay on that side because the land is good for their cattle, for their livestock. So this what now their clarification. We're going to look at what Moses has to say here in Deuteronomy, and we continue on Deuteronomy 32 and verse 20 through 24. And Moses said to them, if you will do this thing, if you'll go armed before the Lord to war, and will go all of you armed over Jordan before the Lord till he has driven out his enemies from before him, and the land be just subdued before the Lord, then afterwards you shall return and be guiltless before the Lord and before Israel. And this land shall be your possession before the Lord. But if you will not do so, behold, you have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. Build you cities for your little ones and your foes for your sheep, and do that which is proceeded out of your mouth. Okay, the cities. Now we'll talk about why build here in a minute, and the sheep. So they just want a safe place to put their families and their livestock. They want to build a safe place to park those. And the sons who are below the children they have below 20 years of age, the shepherds and shepherdess can take care of the livestock while they're off fighting, but they'll put them up at somewhere safe at night to keep them away from predators and thieves, and they got to have somewhere safe to go themselves because there's the inhabitants of the land. The land of Canaan is just on the other side of the Jordan River, and really most of the Jordan River, someone could just chunk a rock across it. It's not like it's the Mississippi River and a formidable barrier, really. They'll just slow someone down going from one side to the other. So, so protect them from the inhabitants of the land coming across and perhaps attacking them. We want these fortified cities to put them in. Then we'll go to war, and we'll go, and you're gonna go armed. No, not before Israel, before the Lord. The Lord. Yes, the Malach Hananiah is going to lead them, and they're going to follow him. He knows the way; they don't, and so on and so forth. We were told we said about the angel of the Lord, but the Lord in heaven is going to be watching them from behind, so to speak. That's why I said, or in front of the Lord, where He can see you. And notice this, and you're going to be guiltless before the Lord, and not just the Lord, Israel, doing what's right doing what's right by God and man, as we're often told to do. We're never really doing right before the Lord if we don't do right if we don't treat people right. Now this thing, but notice they do not. Now remember, because Moses knows he's about to die. God said so, told him so. It was the last episode, in our last lesson. So if you have this thought, I'm not gonna, you're gonna get away with it because I'm gonna be dead, and you're not, don't even think that, because you're sinning against the Lord, and your sin will find you out. We need to park there for a minute because it's true about all of us. Do not think you'll ever get away with anything ever. Be sure your sin will find you out. You will have consequences for it. Now, you depending on the nature of it, and depending on the nature of it, and perhaps God, as we looked at before, God doesn't treat ignorance the same as rebellion. Those kind of things. How severe those consequences are depend on the severity of the sin. And yes, the Bible makes it very plain. God says very often they have sinned more than those who did this were sinned more than those who did that. Makes it very plain. That's not that that some sins are called great sins. Well, that means other sins are not as great. That's going to have some bearing in it. What you knew, but also your reaction. Are you quick to repent? Remember in James, if you judge yourself, you'll not be judged. If you're quick to repent, God's not going to bring severe, you can avoid severe judgment from God. But do not forget also that God is not mocked with a man reaps, he'll sow. So you may still have consequences, but they'll be lessened. And, or, be lessened, or some of them even removed. David, for example, he sinned against Bathsheba with his sin with Bathsheba, got a venereal disease, but when he repented, God healed him of it. We're told that in the Psalms, okay? But his sin found him out. He tried all this scheming, and sin still found him out. And be sure your sin will find you out. If you have anything in your life, any sin in your life, first of all, repent, stop doing it. And maybe it's a sin of omission, like we talked about before, where Aaron just didn't stop Moses from doing the wrong thing, and God punished him with the same punishment he punished Moses. Perhaps it start, maybe you're being spineless when other people are sin, and you're saying nothing against it, and your silence is consent, and you need to quit being, you need to grow a spine and speak up and say something. But either way, whether it's a sin of omission or commission, first thing is start doing the opposite. Start doing the thing you should have done. Stop doing the thing you shouldn't have done, and start doing the thing you should be doing. And of course, once that is, you need to confess yourself before your sin. We confess our sins, then Jesus Christ is just, we have an advocate of the Father who's just to forgive us. But we have to confess them. If we try to go around hiding them, act like we don't have them, so on and so forth, when we've sinned, and I'm not saying you have to, everyone sins all the time. That that part I just quoted, it actually starts off with this: I write these things that you sin not. The expectation is you're not going to sin, but if you do, here's what you do. Paul said, I crucify the flesh and the desires thereof. And then he goes on, well, when your flesh is crucified to desire, and the works of the flesh are these is basically sin. When you crucify the flesh, desires of it, you're not going to sin. Okay. So I'm not want to give you the expectation that you have to be sinning all the time. That you're a sinner saved by grace, because the Bible says no such thing. It says such once you once were, but now you're sanctified. Now you're set apart. I write these things you sin not. Go and sin no more, as Messiah said to the woman caught in adultery. But if you do, your sin will find you out. You're not going to get away with it. Best thing you can do is admit it, ask forgiveness, repent, and ask for help from God for you to overcome it. He will give you the strength. He gave you his spirit, as we showed, to write his laws on your heart so you can keep his laws from your heart. You have all the tools you need to go and sin no more. Messiah meant what he said to that woman, and he was not being cruel, telling her something to do that she could not do. But do not be deceived into thinking you are somehow going to get away with it. You're going to get away with nothing. You'll have consequences in this life and consequences in the world to come if you die without repentance. I mean, that's why Jesus gave that woman Jezebel space to repent. He'll give you space to repent. But everything you say and do is being recorded in those books that we talked about in our last lesson in the tribulation and the kingdom. Your sin will find you out. Do not let anyone delude you into thinking you'll never get away with anything ever. So don't even try. Okay, now we're going to continue on here in Numbers 32, verse 25 to 30. And the children of Gad and the children of Reuben spake unto Moses, saying, your servants will do as the Lord commands. Our little ones, our wives, our flocks, and all our cattle should be in the cities in Gilead of Gilead. But your servants will pass over, every man armed for war, before the Lord to battle, as my Lord says. So concerning them, Moses commanded Eleazar the priest, and Joshua son of Nun, and the chief fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel. And Moses said to them, if the children of Gad and the children of Reuben shall pass through with you over Jordan, every man armed to battle before the Lord, and the land shall be subdued before you, then you shall give them the land of Gilead for possession. But they will not pass over your arm, they shall have their possessions. They shall have possessions among you in the land of Canaan. Okay, you're not gonna so they agree to do what Moses said. Now Moses called all the rest of Israel and said, okay, this part of the eastern promised land, they want their inheritance over here. If they'll do what they say, they can have it. But if they don't, you know, you're to make sure they don't you're to make sure they don't get it. Okay, is what I'm specifically saying here. If they don't do what they said, you make sure you are not to let them have it. You're to have them in the land of Canaan on the west side. You're not to let them have it on the east side. So they're not going to get this land without doing their part to take all the land. And now notice. Oh, I remember what I was saying. Notice it's in the land of Gilead. Okay, in the land of Gilead for possession in particular. And these cities were mostly in this area of Gilead, which kind of runs from Nebo here was mentioned up here, perhaps to the Yarmuk River, perhaps even a little past. But mostly it's this area here from Nebo to, well, right here, you can kind of see. It's kind of a range of mountains there. And this area here is where they're mostly concentrated at, where they're going to be parking their park. Now, Heshbon's up here, if I remember right. So, Heshbon's more up in this area, but they're going to be parking in these cities near the Jordan River. That's the main thing I want you to notice. Those cities they marked are near the Jordan River here, which puts them. So when they go over to, when the whole army of Israel crosses the Jordan and is fighting over here, it will be a barrier between the Canaanites over here and their cities. So they didn't put the cities way over here on the edges where someone else might attack them. Okay. So that makes the cities a little more defensive. This is why, they picked these cities in the land of Gilead in particular because of their defensibility. Okay, now we continue on Numbers 32, verse 31, 33, and read the following. The children of Gad and the children of Reuben answered, saying, as the Lord has said unto your servants, so will we do. We will pass over before the Lord into the land of Canaan, that the possession of our inheritance on this side Jordan may be ours. And Moses gave unto them, even the children of Gad, to the children of Reuben, and to the half tribe of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, the kingdom of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and the kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, the land with the cities thereof in the coast, even the cities of the country round about. So they agreed to this, but I want to draw your attention to something. Remember, it's only been the children Gad and Reuben and Gad It was Reuben and Gad originally, I think. Maybe it was, yeah, it was Reuben and Gad originally. They're the ones that asked for this. But now notice, I want you to notice that he's he's giving it to somewhere I just missed it. He's giving he's giving it to the there we go, the half tribe Manasseh also. And notice also this kingdom of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, and kingdom of Og of Bashan. Remember, the Amorite kingdom was originally just the northern one, and this Sihon came down and took land from Moab, and we'll see also land from the Ammonites as well. And remember, the children of Israel are not allowed to take any from them, but since they had already lost it and made a treaty with the Amorites, it was now Amorite land. They were allowed to take that land without violating what God had said about not taking any of the land of the Ammonites and the Moabites. So the cities, but bring attention to why this half tribe of Manasseh. We got to go back here to our map. Now the land's a little crooked here, okay, but roughly a third, a quarter, something of that nature is there on the east side, okay. Remember, this is the border here of Ammon. Moab's down here; they can't take any of that. That river there on this part going here, is kind of bordering it. Here's this King's Highway and runs near the border as well. Okay, so that's to give everyone access. So this, remember, they go through Damascus and that goes to Assyria, and everything in the east goes up through Assyria. Babylon has to make the great circle route. If it wants to go to Egypt, has to go through Damascus, and if it wants to go down to the port of Alat down the Red Sea, or perhaps it'd have trade through India, it has to go down this way. Wants to go to Egypt, it can either go by the way of the sea or by the way of Shur. Okay. And they have this here as the river of Egypt, this Wadi, and perhaps it is, okay, instead of the Nile. But either way, so gives you an idea, but you can kind of see you got this big, that's a third or a quarter of the land. Well, remember when they took the census last time we looked at, they took the census, they had to the old goal was they had to find out how many was in each tribe and so on and so. And the tribes were going to get there's proportional number of people they had, and the goal is basically to have every man who's got an inheritance have roughly an equal size inheritance throughout all of Israel. Well, this land is too large for just Gad and Reuben based on their numbers. Okay, how much land this is. Remember they sent the spies before so they got a rough map and kind of got an idea how large the land is in total. Know that somewhere between a quarter and a third of it's over here, and it's too large for just these two tribes. So Moses says we're give half we're unto half the tribe of Manasseh. Well, why? Why the tribe of Manasseh? Well, the son of Joseph. This is a big clue. Okay. What? Okay. So what? So why is why? Because Joseph remembers they're still carrying his bones from Egypt, and he gave command and they be buried here at Shechem, where his father had built Sukkot, called Sukkot, and he where he built booths to have a place to live, and his sons messed it up because they dealt deceitfully and violently. Levi and Simeon caused him to go back to wandering, which he was tired of doing, and and then of course they got consequences for that later when he's blessing his children being scattered because they kind of scattered him. So they were, in that sense that he couldn't just stay in one place. So they were scattered as a consequence of that. Well, that land's right here. As you can see, this is Ephraim here in this area here. Okay. So so part of Manasseh is going to be right, the children of Joseph. Manasseh is the other brother. It's going to be right here. It's going to be located right here close along this way to Ephraim. Okay. Well, well, the tribe didn't want not going to be fragmented. So the other parts can be just on this side of the Jordan River. And why half the tribe? Because again, every man gets a roughly an equal size piece of property. Well, their numbers entirely are too much to put on the east side, and they'd be fragment. And perhaps on the west side, it may make it too small for other people. So they're to keep that again that rule of the property, and they basically every man having the same size piece of property, or fairly close to the same piece size. They are going to end up with half the tribe's going to be here, half's going to be here. But that's why they're doing it, because it's just more land than these two tribes. The number of men who are going to war warrant. And Manasseh again, because he is the son of Joseph. Joseph's two sons, the land of Joseph, it could be called collectively, is the land of Ephraim plus the land of Manasseh, and it's going to be all together, just like all the other tribes, except Reuben and Simeon aren't going to be scattered. They're not going to be fragmented at all to avoid that fragmentation. So now we can now, so now we see well, the answer. Now we see them taking action to do what they said they would do here in Numbers, and we continue on Numbers 32, verse 34 through 38. The children of Gad built Dibon and Ataroth and Aroer. And Ataroth, I'm sorry, Atroth and Shofan and Yazazur and Yogbaha and Binmara and Betharan. Beth Nimrah. I'm sorry, Beth Nimrah and Betharan, fenced cities and folds of sheep. And the children of Reuben built Heshbon and Eliah and Gil and Ger and wait, Kuryathim. There we go. Yathaim, Kuryathim, and Nebo and Belmeon. Their names being changed, and Shibna, and gave other names to the cities which they built. Okay, now remember, well, let's just focus on this right here. First of all, Heshbon, remember, was a stronghold, of the king of Og, perhaps his winter palace. He had in our capital city up north, up near Hermon. Also, we'd read, but it wasn't uncommon for these people to have a a cooler place to go, higher elevation in the heat of the summer, and then move down to a lower elevation that wasn't as cold in the winter. It's a very common practice in the throughout a lot of history, really, until modern times. We have modern heating and cooling. So so Heshbon. So why has it got to be built? Well, because they damaged it, broke through the walls, whatever the case was. These places when the judgment of the Amorites was carried out. So they got to rebuild. So they got to repair the damage. So built, that Hebrew word escapes me right now. We've looked at it before in another lesson or context. Would be better. Would repair would be a better term. They're not building these cities up from scratch. They're rebuilding them. There's a better word. They're rebuilding them. They're repairing all that damage they did and taking them. So, well, their people that they're putting their wives or children set will be safe while they're off to war. And notice their names being changed. So later you may see some reference to these some name, and you may not know. Could very well be some cases the Bible tell us this place was called that formerly or whatever. Sometimes don't, and it may very well be like Bel Meon may have a totally different name, and perhaps we cannot discern it from the text, but just letting you know. And so they're given new names, and they're given other names to cities. They're renaming cities as well. Now, in Numbers 32, verse 39 through 42, read the following. The children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, went to Gilead and took it and dispossessed the Amorite which was in it. And Moses gave Gilead unto Machir, the son of Manasseh. He dwelt there. And Jair, the son of Manasseh, went and took the small towns thereof and called them Havoth Jair. I mean, Havoth Yair. Yair. And Yairs, I guess, right. And no, Yair. And Nobal went and took Kenath in the village there and called it Nobah after his own name. Okay, so this some of these sons of this some of the sons of Manasseh, and it's really not about their exact son. They've died in the wilderness, okay, or they died before they even went in the wilderness, probably. But their descendants, okay, they went to Gilead. Gilead, all right, now this one, and he dwelt there. This one here went to these small towns in Gilead and called that whole area, you know, Havoth. Can't remember what both means. It's perhaps like towns or villages of Yair. Okay. And Noba went and called that area Noba. But here's what I want you to notice about this: all their descendants are living together. As I mentioned before, inside a tribe, a clan, these would be clans: Makir, Yair, Noba. Okay. And inside of them, down to the individual family. Okay. It just keeps going down. And they're all together. So inside Manasseh, you don't have his various descendants fragmented and scattered. All of them, their descendants of one son, are together. All their descendants of another son are together, and that pattern just keeps going on and on, as I mentioned, till you get down to the bottom. Except in the cases of Simeon and Levi, who are scattered as punishment for preventing from ruining their father's opportunity to quit having to move around all the time and whatever, in a way scattering him until they had to go to Egypt. So back to our map. So some of the Gilead there and here, and it's this area of Gilead up here. Okay, so Gilead you might think of as all the way up to the Yarmuk River. Okay, they're up here. Some of them, I remember they're all down here because it's what is secure right now. But they're gonna move up to here eventually. Where they built these cities, but we already saw this that Heshbon, right? So some of it's up here, and they're all along this area along here. Okay, is where they're at. But you got this northern, the northern one's Gad, as we can see. I'm sorry, Reuben's got Heshbon. Heshbon has got Reuben. Reuben's he's got Nebo also. Nevo's down here. Heshbon, I may have this wrong. Heshbon's Sihon's kingdom, perhaps. Anyways, Heshbon's down, and the other and Reuben's up here, and down in here in the middle, area is Manasseh. Manasseh actually takes this area right here, even though they built cities, they're fortifying cities down here at the moment. Now, move this over here. Okay. Now we continue. Now we're going to look at this again a little more. We're going to continue on here in Numbers 34 in verses 14 through 15. We've wrapped this chapter with this. For the tribe of the children of Reuben, according to the house of fathers, tribe of Gad, according to the house of their fathers, received their inheritance, and half the tribe of Manasseh received their inheritance. The two tribes and the half tribe received their inheritance on this side, near Jericho, eastward towards the sun rising. Okay. Now we're going to get some more details. Here's Jericho here. Again, the lowest city ever built on earth as far as elevation goes. Here's the Dead Sea. And so the point is they're along here. Okay. They're along here at this time, but they're up conquering there, and they're gonna just later they will they're finally done, they'll occupy all their land. Now let's continue reading about this. Now, now some important details in their land here about who's getting where. And in Deuteronomy 4, verse 33 through 5, we get this important detail. Because remember, I mentioned that the Levites have been scattered, namely Beazer in the wilderness, in the plain country, and the Reubenites of the Reubenites, Gamoth in Gilead of the Gadites, and Golan in Bashan of the Manassites. This is the law which Moses set for the children of Israel. These are the testimony and statutes that Moses spoke unto the children of Israel after they came out of Egypt. Okay, so these are all cities of refuge. You notice each one of these tribes on the east side is having to give one city for a city of refuge. And remember, these cities of refuge are Levitical cities. We'll talk about that in a minute here. So the Reubenites are down here in Beezer's down this area, down this area, down this area here. Remote, Ramoth, again, this middle area. Bees are down this way. Ramoth here. And Bashan, here's Bashan, and Golan is there, that the Golan Heights today are named after. Okay. So it's up here. And if you remember, we looked before, someone made a map, and it's about a day's journey to one of these cities. No matter where you're at on the east side, you're going to be within a day's journey of it. And there's three cities on the west side, too, we talked about. And you're close to a day's journey. And one of the west side ones actually, one of the east side ones, actually, their day's journey circled, overlapped, and there's a bit more than a day's journey in some cases over here, but still about a day's journey, kind of spread evenly across this east side. Because, well, the Dead Sea's, if you're on foot, it's a form of a barrier to get it to running, running to Jerusalem or Hebron, to Hebron. That's another one of them, to running over to Hebron. Okay. So they have to go up three of their cities for cities of refuge. But that's not all. Here in Joshua 43, verses 14, verse 3, we read the following. Moses gave them inheritance to 2 tribes, and after there, so but the Levites, he gave no inheritance among them. And remember, this means farmland, because as we saw, the inheritance of the Levites, they were given cities besides those cities of refuge we saw as well over here. Matter of fact, let me think. Their cities were all clumped also. The priests got all their cities in one, were in territories close to each other, and we're in a couple of from some tribes, from several tribes alone, and then the Merari were from another, and the Gershonites were from another. And the Korathites, yeah, no, anyways, yeah, the one from the other one. Okay, so they all got their, they got no inheritance of land, but they did get inheritance of cities. The Levites did. And again, these cities aren't shown, but just think there's little cities dotting here, and some of them they even built, or we perhaps rebuilt. They had to give to the Levites, when the time came. Okay, now we're going to continue. Now we're going to continue on. Look at some more features about this inheritance on the left, on this inheritance in the east, in the eastern this inheritance in the eastern promised land. And again, we're looking at where it came from, because this is important understanding it. This is very significant to its characteristics and everything. Here's what we read in Deuteronomy 3, verses 12 through 15. This land which you possessed that time from Aor, which is by the river Arnon, in the half Mount Gilead, and the cities thereof, I gave unto the Reubenites and the Gadites. And the rest of Gilead and all of Bashan, being the kingdom of Og, I gave to the half tribe Manasseh, all the region of Argob with Bashan, which is the land of the giants. And Jair, the son of Manasseh, took all the country of Argob from the coast of Geshuri and Makatha, Makatha, Maakathi, Maakathi. There we go, Maakathi, and named him after his own name, Bashan, Jovath, Jair, unto this day. And I gave Gilead unto Machir. Okay, now if you remember here, I forgot I should point this out perhaps little smaller, a little sooner here. Notice Machir dispossessed the Ammonite which was in it. Some of the Ammonites had returned, or perhaps they had, they went to the ones in the cities, but again they were out. They fled over to the other country and they came back. As soon as they saw the Israelis withdrew, they came back in. So he has taken that. He has dispossessed them, whoever they were, once again. Which now it doesn't say destroyed them completely, like we saw before. It may be that some of them escaped as well, but they're not going to live there no more. Okay. And we talked about why that was, because God made a promise to Abraham, all the families of the earth be blessed. So some of the Amorites have to survive, but they cannot live in the promised land. And some are not as, some are so wicked they had to be destroyed. But God left a remnant nonetheless to fulfill that promise to Abraham. So Geshuri and Maakathai and Maakathi, there we go, Maakathi are actually tribes. They're actually tribes that came from the Canaanites and the Amorites that had not been ran out, that have not been ran out. Okay. So there's still some of them left in the eastern promised land. So he's taken all this over to their border, but so there's still some land to be possessed actually in the east. They haven't taken total possession of, and they won't be able to as long as they're out in war on their side. They'll have to come back and drive out whoever's left when they move out of their cities and move into their farmland. They'll have to deal with them then. So the rest of Gilead gave it to the Reubenites and to the Gadites. He gave them that part Aror, which is by the river Arnon. Aror, Aurora is a city, and it's perhaps on an island in the river. Arnon's that border of Moab. So they got the southern part and half of Gilead. And notice Reubenites and Gadites together. He's not specifying who's getting which part here, just them together and those cities thereof. Now, Gilead, the rest of Gilead, the northern part, and all of Bashan, the kingdom of Gog, he gave to Manasseh. So Gilead, he gave Gilead to Machir, as we mentioned a minute ago, and showed, because Machir dispossessed the Ammonites out of it. Now, under the Reubenites, the Gadites, I gave even Gilead into the river Arnon, half the valley, and the border under the river Jabbok, which is the border of the children of Ammon. The plain also in Jordan, the coast thereof, and kindleth under the sea of the plain, even the salt sea under Ashdoth, Higthah, eastward. Okay. Now, at first glance, this might seem to be a little bit of a contradiction. Okay, he just says he gave half the land. He gave half the land. He gave half the land, all the country of Argob, and took them to this day, and half of Mount Gilead. Okay, he gave to the Reubenites and Gadites. So you've got this land up here, but you also got this land up here that's belonging. Notice again, collectively, Reubenites and Gadites, and Bashan and the tribe Manasseh here has Bashan, and they have the other half of that mount. Okay. So by mount, he means this mountain range here. Okay. And so they have here from the Arnon to the Yavik River. So Gilead has this northern half here. But then he talks about them having land up here by Kinnereth. That's the Hebrew word for the Sea of Galilee. Literally means harp. It's the large 22 string, named after the large 22 string harp, by the way. There's another word for the 10 string, the smaller 10 string harp. And because it's kind of harp shaped in its shape. And he's, so, but note what he's not specifying is which exactly which land belongs to Reuben, exactly which land belongs to Gad at this point. But collectively, they got this and this here, and Manasseh's got this chunk in the middle between them, without sorting out who's going to have up here and who's going to have between Reuben and Gad, who's going to have here and who's going to have here, not sorted out yet. So we continue on here in Deuteronomy 3, verse 18 through 12, 22, where Moses is rehearsing this shortly after the events we looked at today. And I command at that time, saying, the Lord your God has given you this land to possess it. You shall pass over armed before your children, the brethren of Israel, all their meat for war. But your wives, your little ones, your children, for I know that you have much cattle, shall abide in your cities which I have given you. So the Lord has given a rest to your brethren as well as unto you, until they possess the land which the Lord your God has given them beyond Jordan, and they shall return every man to his possession, which I've given you. And I commanded Joshua at the time, saying, my eyes have seen all the Lord your God has done unto these two kings. So shall the Lord do unto all the kingdoms where you go to possess it. Shall not fear them, for the Lord God your God shall fight for you. Okay, so he's given them this land. God gave you the land. He's reminded that God did it, and therefore they got to pass over before your brethren, the children of Israel. Take the point as they said they would do. Okay, they're gonna, and I know you have much livestock. Okay, so, it's why he's agreeing to this. They have a lot of livestock, and they got to do something with it, whether at war. For whatever reason, they have perhaps more livestock per person than the other people. So, and they got this. So the Lord's giving them bread. So the land's on the west side's divided. And we'll talk about that perhaps in our next lesson. Certainly in the future lesson, in the near future, I believe in our next lesson we'll talk about the Western Promised Land. So, and he finishes off with his commanded Joshua to not fear them. That Joshua's going to lead them. They're going to go before the other tribes as they said they would, at least initially. But God's going to be the one that gives the victory in the end. It's not dependent upon their bravery or Joshua's leadership alone. Their bravery, that's what they're told do not be afraid. Do not fear them, because God is going to give them the victory. He is doing the fighting just as he did in the Eastern Promised Land with the Amorites, through the Melech Adonai. As long as they'll follow him and do what he says. Like everything, it's conditional in the Bible. Okay, now we're going to go to Deuteronomy 4 and look at verses. And look at verse 46 through 49. And we're gonna get a little more insight to this land they have here. Moses, again, a little vague about who's getting which part, other than the Manasseh getting that in the middle. Reuben and Gad can get some of the north and some of the south, but not really specifying who's getting what at that point. On this sword, Jai Jordan, in the valley over against Beth Peor, in the land of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, with Moses and the children of Israel smote, before they came forth out of Egypt. And they possessed his land, and the land of King Og of Bashan, the two kings of the Amorites which are on this side towards the sun rising. From Aurora, which is by the bank of the river Arnon, even the Sihon, which is Hermon, and all the plain this side eastward of the Jordan eastward, even unto the sea of the plain, under the springs of Pisgah. Okay, so Moses rehearsed. Now, I did correct myself earlier. Heshbon's down here. Okay, known for its fish pools. So it's down here. All right, so they're down here, and they're going to get land up here between those two tribes. But the entire thing they took from the Amorites, notice, goes all the way up to Seir. And remember, Seir we saw last week was what the Canaanites called Hermon. And this, sorry. So he's just saying all the way down here, the springs of Pisgah are down here, right here where the Arnon River empties into the Dead Sea. The Moab having the other part of the Dead Sea. Okay, so you've got this Dead Sea, the Sea of Salt here. And he's just saying we took all this land from here to here, along the river mostly, except Bashan. There's perhaps still over here. We're not gonna go into Ammon, the part that's Ammon, and up here we've taken Bashan, but we perhaps got some leftovers over here. We got to deal with later. Now we continue on in Deuteronomy 29, verse 7 through 8, where he continues again to talk about this being the land of the land of the Amorites, for God brought judgment on them. When it came to this place, Sihon, the king of Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, the king of Heshbon, and the king of Og, the king of Bashan, came out against us in the battle, and we smote them. We took their land and gave it to an inheritance for the Reubenites, for the Gadites, and to the half tribe of Manasseh. Okay, so again, now he's just saying collectively all this land we've given, and it was the land of the Amorites. It was the land of the Amorites. The entire eastern promised land was the land of the Amorites. They didn't take any from the children they didn't fight with the Ammonites, the Moabites, or anyone other than these Amorites. Remember, it was an ethnic group that had split off from the Canaanites that moved east of the Jordan River and took over everything on the east side. Now, in Joshua 13, verses 8 through 12, Joshua again rehearsed this about this was the land of the Amorites. And here's what he says about, and he's rehearsed, and it's about what Moses did. Okay, with Moses there. So with Moses, with whom Joshua again 13 verse 8 through 12, with whom the Reubenites, the Gadites have received their inheritance, who Moses gave them beyond Jordan eastward. Even Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave them from Aroer, which is on the bank of Arnon, the sea that's in the midst of the river, in all the plains of Medeba, near unto Dibon, and all the cities of Sihon, king of the Amorites, which he reigned in Heshbon, under the border of the children of Ammon, and then the Gilead and the border of the Gershonites, of the Gershonites, and the Maacathites. Here we go, Maacathites, and all Mount Hermon, all of Bashan, unto Salca, and all the kingdom of Og and Bashan, which reigned in Ashtaroth and in Edrei, who remained of the remnant of the giants, for these did Moses smite and cast them out. Okay, Moses was leading them when they went to he was in charge then. Remember, the Melech Adonai did the actual smiting for the most part, the angel of the Lord. And so Moses is giving that to them. He was in charge of it being conquered. It was his to the side, and he decided to give it to them as they asked. But notice these places, Salka, places where they haven't driven people out. Like we've seen Amorites have came back in. Well, perhaps there was one place they came from. Okay, the Gershurites and the Ma, Machathites. Machathites. I mean, there's still some of these tribes that they've not gotten rid of yet either. But but they got rid of the main power in the area. You know, and that's and that's Sihon, who came out of the northern kingdom and come and conquered some of the land of, we'll see here in a minute, the Ammonites, as well as land of the Moabites. Had taken that from them. Well, now they've taken it from him and this kingdom of Og. And Og, notice the remnant of the giants. He's the last. We saw before, he was all that remained of the giants. He's the last of the giants, the last of those who had a human, according to Genesis 6, had a human mother and a fallen angel for a father. Goliath was a son of the giant. The Anakim, Anak was a giant. His descendants were descendants of the giants. They also have to be destroyed, as we talked about last time. So Moses destroyed the last of the giants, where Moses is with them. And and also notice there's a city that's in the midst of the river, some island out there in the river Arnon. That's counted as belonging to not belonging to the Moabites, perhaps in the treaty it belonged to the Amorites, and now it belongs to the Israelites, the Reubenites and Gadites, however it splits. So he's making this again very plain that this land here had all been the land, the kingdoms, the two kingdom, primarily the two kingdoms of the Amorites that went from here to here and from here to here. Okay. All the way up to, all the way up to here. That's where this land came from. Moses was in charge of its conquest, and Moses gave it to the Reubenites and Gadites because they asked him. And you can see they needed the land for the cattle. Now we're getting the particulars of who gets which piece of land. Again, it's shown that we've seen that Manasseh in the middle, but it just speaks in generally of these two tribes collectively, Reubenites and Gadites, getting the rest. So we're going to continue on Joshua. We're going to go in Joshua 13 in verses 12, in verse 15 through 21, and we're going to read about who Reuben got. The Moses gave him what Reuben got, and Moses gave him the tribe of the children of Reuben, inheritance according to their families. Their coast is from Aroer, which is the bank of the Arnon, and the city is in the midst of the river, and all the plain of Medeba, and Heshbon, and all her cities in the plain, and Dibon, and Bamoth Baal, and Beth Baal Meon, and Jahazer, and Gedamoth, and Methaath, and Kirgathaim, and Sibnah, and Zeresh Sharar in the mount of the valley, Beth Peor, Ashtoth Pisgah, and Beth Yeshimoth. There we go. Beth Yeshimoth, and all the cities of the plain, and all the kingdom of the king of of the Amorites, which dwelt in Heshbon, whom Moses smote with the prince of Midian, Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, Reba, which were dukes of Sihon, dwelling in the country. Okay, now remember there were 5 kings we saw about revenge on the Midian. There were 5 kings Moses took revenge on. There may have been other there's obviously other Midianites or later in history. It destroyed all these 5 kings and all their people and whatever in this revenge. Notice there's 5 princes of 5 sons of kings here in the Amorites, and they were dukes. They were there as diplomatic. They weren't going to inherit. They they were in allegiance with the Amorites, and so when this is not unusual. Two kings making a confederates or whatever, and one of them sends they each send their son, one of their sons to live with the other guy because they figure they're not going to attack each other if they got the other guy's son. Okay, that kind of thing. Well, so Midian here, these five kings read about their five sons were there as part of the king in cahoots of living as dukes, rule as nobles in the kingdom of Sihon. So when all the judgment of the Amorites came and they were all destroyed, these five sons, these sons of these five kings of Midian were killed as well, and that's perhaps what prompted their wanting God to destroy the Israelites, and ultimately bringing judgment on themselves for seeking to have the Israelites destroyed completely. They were destroyed completely. And this is perhaps why, because of this connection. So notice, so they've got the southernmost part, and all the kingdom of Heshbon, of Sihon, which reigned in Heshbon. So they've got all this area here. Here's Nebo, we saw that. They've got this entire area. I mean, you just kind of imagine, kind of along the King's Highway, over here to the river here, the Iric River here, down this way. They've got all this land right down here is the land of Reuben. Now, we're going to read about the inheritance of Gad. And Moses gave inheritance to the tribe of Gad, even the children of Gad according to their families. Their coast was Jazer, and all the cities of Gilead, and half the land of the children of Ammon, from Aurora, that's before Rabbah, and from Heshbon under Ramath Pisgah and Benanim, and from Mahanaim in the border of Debir, and in the valley of Beth Aram, in Beth Nimrah, in Sukkot, and Zaphor, the rest of the kingdom of the king of the of Sihon Kesha, toward his valleys into the edge of the sea of the Kinnereth on the other side of the Jordan eastward. And their inheritance was after their families, their cities, and their villages. Okay, notice the rest of the kingdom. So a little bit of a mistake there I made. This guy's kingdom went way up here. Here's kingdom of Bashan. I just went here and went down there. And notice half the kingdom of Moab, half the kingdom of Ammon. Ammon had owned some of this land. Perhaps up here. Okay, here they are here. This had been formerly part of Moab, remember, we saw. So now Ammon perhaps owned some land up here, and they take it above the Jarvik River. Remember, this is their border. So their border's going this way and this way. Okay. The king. So now they've taken this area up. So they're giving some of this area along here as well. But half of Gilead, remember, the northern half. All right. So they got this area here up to this lake, up to the Sea of Galilee. All right, so they got up there up to the edge of this, even to the edge of the Sea of Galilee. It says, okay, so even to here, so they're kind of along here, like that. Okay, like maybe it's about here, or perhaps to this highway here, along and up and around here. Okay, now we're going to read about Manasseh. And Lord gave it half the tribe of Manasseh. Moses gave an inheritance to half the tribe of Manasseh. And this was the possession of the half tribe of the children of Manasseh for their families. Their coast was from Mahanaim, all of Bashan, all the kingdom of the Og, the king of Bashan, all the towns of Yair, which are in Bashan, three score cities, and half of Gilead, in Asherah, in Adres. These are the kingdom of Bashan, were pertaining to the children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, even half the children of Machir by their families. These are the countries Moses distributed the inheritance of the plain, the other side of the Jordan, by Jericho eastward. Okay, so as mentioned, they kind of got this lower part down here. If I remember right, the Javik River, here's the border, right? Okay, the border here. Sihon had taken this half from them. The border, this had been fortified before he didn't go down there, but they had taken, Sihon had taken this half, and now the border's still like there. And what they've done here, so what they've done here is they're gonna get this part here. You can kind of imagine kind of a funky shape, say from the Yavik River up to about where this D in Gilead is, or perhaps up to this road, perhaps even to the highway of Shur, and this area up here. Okay. So they're getting this back part, this sort of back part over here. And really, the land here that they're getting is they're getting some of this coastal land. Remember, this is, of course, elevation, right? But it still gives you kind of an idea. You got some of this flyer land, but a lot of the land's more rugged. And you got some of that rugged land here as well, and here. And this brings us to an important point that we need to understand about our own lives. Remember, they have much cattle, and that means livestock. And of course, that means cattle, sheep, and goats, but it can also include donkeys, horses, and camels. Okay. They're also livestock, hoof stock, if you would. Okay. So if it, whoever gets this piece of land of their inheritance in these various places, that's going to determine the characteristics of what they're going to be able to raise there. If they get land that's here in these mountains, say, if you got land that's mountainous, and I know general curves, I know rugged mountains. It's hard to climb. That's steep or whatever. Rugged, steep land, perhaps covered with large thickets of thickets of shrubs and things like that. Out of cattle, sheep, and goats, you have to raise goats. Now, if you got gently rolling hills with taller grass, you can kind of go. You can kind of raise sheep or goats. I mean, sheep or cattle, either one, or perhaps you can. Or if it's some of the areas got maybe some mixture, you can run goats and sheep together, and they'll run together quite well generally. And the goats actually offer some protection to the sheep because they will fight a predators, unlike the sheep, which even though the rams have great horns, mostly they just fight each other when they're wanting to mate. They don't really, they don't, they even when they do fight a predator, they don't work together the way the goats will. To fight a predator together. So, often people would run the sheep and goats together for that reason. You're kind of in this area, but if you're down an area, let's say as tall grass, that's good for cattle. But let's say it's short grass, you can't really raise sheep too well. And the reason is you have to move them around all the time when you got that. It's a lot of trouble because the sheep will pull the grass out by the roots. And, the wrong time of year, it's not going to grow back. Okay. This is part of how desertification happens. People go in and they cut down forests and start raising goats there. And eventually the goats, and they overgraze and the goats kind of eat down all the brush. And, eventually that grass starts coming up. Well, they bring in sheep and it's short grass often because the trees are what was pulling the wire of the ground to create rain. Because you can undesertify an area like Israel has done by planting trees to pull the water from the underground aquifer out into the air. and the sheep come along and eat the grass and pull it up, and eventually you end up with just desert where there was once a forest. The Sahara Desert today was only about one quarter of its size in Roman times. It was mostly the Sahara forest back then. All they can call that Sahara, Hebrew, Arabic word, literally means desert. But yes, it was only about one quarter the size of this today in Roman times. This process of desertification. So you have to be wise and pick the right animal that matches the land. And there are characteristics of sheep. Remember Psalms 23, he laid me beside still waters. Sheep are finicky. They will not drink out of running water, and you cannot have them. You have to create pools of water from the drink out of to kind of still it down, but you got to make sure it's not too deep. They fall in, particularly got a lot of wool. They can easily wool soak up so much of the moisture, it weighs them down and they drown. So you really don't want them near these river areas. Well, if you're a lot of lands down here, you may be doing that. Now you may have another problem too. Let's say you're down here at your plot land here near where the Jabbok River in the Jordan. Well, at certain times of year, they tend to overrun their banks. Sheep, that will absolutely kill them. Again, for the reasons I mentioned before. And even if they don't die from that, they get soaked enough they can catch disease and disease kills them. But cattle will fare better. Okay, and goats you absolutely cannot have them there either. But what you probably really want to do is plant crops in that area. Okay. And during the area, it's got a lot of livestock. Your crops may not be so much like wheat and corn, but like silage and oh gosh, I just faced it. Things like that. Fo- fodder, animal food crops. People used to grow out some areas where I were where they had areas like this, you know, and because that flooding, if it overflows the banks the right time, a kind of fairly regular time in the year, you can work with that and you plant the appropriate crops that's advantageous to help them germinate, help make the soil, help the soil where you can, make it easier to work with. So here's the point of all this. The land everyone got in their inheritance determined their occupation, determined what they could do. Now, if it didn't matter if you got land up here, if your lot fell up here in one of these rugged areas, and you're like, well, I want to raise cattle, you're not going to do well. All you have to do is say, well, what have I been given? What's the best I can do that I've been given? Oh, this is great land for goats, and there's milk goats and meat goats and hair goats as well. You can raise ones whose hair grows really long, and again, even the land has a play on which one of those you might want to use race. By the way, primarily, or you can get a multi-purpose goat. The original breeds for multi-purposes. They start selectively breeding them for these various characteristics later. But even that, so what you want to do is pick out what the land's going to do best. Well, your own life, you've been given talents and skills by God. And you don't need to be wanting to do something you were not given the talent or skill to do. I mean, I myself, for example, am fantastic, been given a fantastic level of skill in software development and all things IT on the software end like that. But I absolutely love music. But I can't carry a tune in a bucket. Okay. It would be disastrous. It'd be disastrous. Maybe if I worked really hard and had really good coaches, I could work my way up to mediocre. But neglecting something God made me already good at and great at, okay, made me the potential to be great at doing. I'd be neglecting that to do something I was made to do, and at best I could be mediocre at doing. You, in the same way, you have been given an inheritance in the form of your talents and skills. And you need to match those inheritance to your inheritance you've been given, your talents and skills, to to two things. You have to match you have to match them to your interests. You're whatever you're interested in, you're going to be good at. Well, there's going to be something you're interested in that you've been given the talents and skill for. You're going to be good at it. And it may something may be hard for other people. It's going to be easy to you because you've been given the tool. You were made to do it. And the other thing is maybe there's multiple things you can do well. And I know that's the case with myself. But the question is, which one will serve the community I'm in? What do they need? What do they need me to do? In my case, where I live, they needed tremendous need for really good IT work. You know, really good IT work when I moved out here, and I've done that most of my career because the truth is, I've saved companies, through the talents God gave me in developing them from bad decisions, or helping recover from bad decisions or avoiding bad decisions. About $300 million in my career. That's how I served my community, the IT of the Tulsa area. I mean, I'm sure if I worked more places, I could save more money. But I have a talent towards that, and seeing, hey, this is not going to work, or or you're better off to just throw the whole thing away and start over, or whatever the case may be. Or, yeah, you do that, it's going to be a disaster. It's going to cost you. It's not going to work right. It's going to cost you a lot of money. I have a talent for this, but God gave it to me. But my community needed it. Now, if they hadn't needed it, I'd had to develop something else they did need. So those are your two factors. What have I been given? What does my community I'm at around me need? Back to our example. Maybe you're up here in the goat area, and maybe your land's suitable for raising milk, sheep, or hair goats. And goat hair was a big deal because I mentioned before the tents were made with it. Well, let's just say there's plenty of people raising meat goats, plenty of people raising milk goats, and not anyone's raising goats for hair, but there's a lot of need for goat hair where you're at. So you now pick the goat hair option because that's what your community needs. That's who you're serving. That's the service you can provide to those you're serving. And it's the same way with your talents. You may have more than one talent. You may have a variety of options, but you got to find the one that your community needs. And that's really drawn out here by this land east of the inheritance. I mean, if you're at the Dead Sea, you're not going to be out fishing. You can't make a life as a fisherman, but you're up here by the Sea of Galilee at the border. We saw that Reuben, was it Reuben? I think it was Reuben. Gad's up here by the border of the Sea of Galilee. Okay, they're up here by the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is ridiculously abundant in fish. It's amazing for its size, how many fish it produces. People are tired of chicken goat or tired of beef. They'd like some fish to go with their goat, instead of just having goat or sheep or beef all the time. And right here you are. The main fish is kind of a variety of tilapia that's mostly harvested there, and you're able to catch it because you live there. Well, what you can't raise here is goats very well, okay? So that's what you've got to do. And it's also true about spiritual gifts. The gifts of the Holy Spirit, the gifts the Holy Spirit gives. People will say spiritual gifts, they have this gift of accounting. No, people who don't even know God have a gift of accounting. I know people who are great accountants who were great accountants, but basically they support all kinds of wicked things. It wasn't a spiritual gift; it was a natural gift, only spiritual in the sense that God gave them a natural gift like gives everyone. But the gift of the Holy Spirit is different, and we don't have to speculate what they are. Their 9 are listed for us. nine gifts of the Spirit. Well, if you've been given one of them, let's say let's say you've been given the gift of healing, and someone's in desperate need of wisdom, that perhaps their business is about to go under and they don't know what to do. You can't help them. But so what you got to do is you direct them to somebody that can. But say they have that gift of wisdom, that gift of wisdom from the Holy Spirit that's beyond human wisdom, where they can know what to do in any situation, the wise thing to do. But someone comes to them and they're dying of cancer, and you happen to laid hands on people in the past. God's used you to heal, and when you did cancer, they were healed of cancer. Say it's up to them, of course, to some degree, but you know they. So you want to send the one that needs wisdom to them, and the one that needs cancer, the one that needs healing, and again, it's gifts of healings, but perhaps you got one for cancer to you, because you got to make your gifts match. You got to match your gifts up with people who need the gift, and don't be trying to get into somebody else's gifts and gifting. It's a gift of the Holy Spirit. You did not give it to yourself. You did not get to select it. The Spirit gives to several areas the Spirit wills. I've never given a message in tongues in a congregation. I've never interpreted one. I've not been given that gift. And I would be fronting is the word people often use. I'd be phony and fake trying to pretend I was doing so. But as I mentioned, I used to lay hands on a lot of people, and they got healed, including at least one guy of cancer immediately. To quote him, felt like fire came out of my hands and burned all the cancer off his body, and it was all gone. And it really was all gone. The doctor confirmed it, which was all God's did all the heavy lifting. I'm taking any credit here, except for other God gave me a gift and I used the gift He gave me, but He did all the heavy lifting in that. But I didn't get jealous of people who did other things that God hadn't given me the gift for, and you should not either. And that's perhaps our biggest lesson today from this division of this division of the land, and also other lesson perhaps is don't seek your own welfare only. They were not seeking their own welfare only. Say, hey, we got it made. We don't have to do nothing. They also have the welfare of their brethren to make sure they were taken care of as well. Do not seek your own welfare, and you will not. Your sins will find you out. We must love our neighbor as ourselves. To not do so is a sin as well, because that's actually a commandment. Okay, now we're going to wrap up with one last problem that's seen in this process of dividing up the eastern promised land. In Numbers 36, 1-4. The chief fathers of the families of the children of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, of the families of the sons of Joseph, came near and spoke before Moses for the princes and the chief fathers of the children of Israel. And they said, the Lord commanded my God to give the land for inheritance by lots of the children of Israel. And my Lord was commanded by the Lord to give the inheritance of Zelophehad to our brother unto his daughters. If he married to any of the sons of the other tribes of the children of Israel, then shall the inheritance be taken away from the inheritance of our fathers, be put in an inheritance of the tribe, put to the inheritance of the tribe where they have received, so it'll be taken from the lot of our inheritance. And when the jubilee of the children of Israel shall be, then shall the inheritance be put into the inheritance of the tribe where they received, so their inheritance should be taken away from the inheritance of the tribe of our fathers. Okay. First of all, I want you to notice this. Notice this order: Manasseh, Machir, Gilead. Remember, we'd read about their father Zelophehad. Even a little further down. Well, back to our map. This area here, okay. This area here, particularly, all of them are living in this area here, and their concern here is, say, someone from Gad or Reuben marries one of these daughters. Now you're going to have fragmentation going on. You're going to have fragmentation where all this land here that belongs to Machir inside the land of inside the land of the tribe of Manasseh's land is not going to belong to the tribe of Manasseh or the land of Machir or even the Machir or even Gilead. Okay, it's not going to belong there. It's going to belong to, let's say, some married from Gad and some from Reuben. Reuben and Gad are going to have little fragments of land. You're going to have a patchwork quilt situation in your land, like we have here in Oklahoma. In Oklahoma, certain land is tribal land, but because they broke it by allotments, and they broke it by allotments to let people choose, and they didn't always choose land that was right next to each other in the tribe. Other land was allowed to be settled by non-members of that tribe or non-Native Americans in some cases. So what you end up having is a patch of some land that belong, and then it depends on whether or not someone's a member of the tribe today lives on it. But you got a patch of land, say even in a city, because Tulsa sits on Creek, Osage, and Cherokee land. And inside the same, because they may have did this allotment this funky way, you could have law. Those tribes have some authority that some authority above the local, and you could have a difference in the laws for say my neighbor next door than me, and yet let's say the guy across the street may have a third set of laws. And you got this fragmentation going on, this fragmentation of culture and so on and so forth. So they don't want it to be fragmented. That is their concern. That you're going to end up with. They want the land of Manasseh to be for the people of Manasseh. And this again is the model the Lord has. We've shown this before recently when we talked about the tribulation and the kingdom to come, and how it'll spread across the earth, the same model. And this thing about Jubilee is every 50th. If I owe someone money, say they're from their tribe, and let's just say I gave my land as surety, and I can't repay them, they can take my land. Well, Jubilee, I get my land back. Okay. So at Jubilee, they may let someone else, say from Manasseh, so they're from Gad, they let someone from Manasseh they farm the land or whatever. They just sold them the right to, but Jubilee, now they get it back, and now you go back to that. So you go back to that fragmentation that, well, really is punishment. It was punishment for Simeon. So, don't let our tribe be punished by this. And that's what's going to happen if they marry someone outside the tribe, and so on and so forth. So let's see what the Lord had to say about this through Moses, about their concern. In Numbers 36, verses 5-9, read the following. And Moses commanded to number the children of Israel according to the word of the Lord, saying, the tribe of the sons of Joseph has said well. This is the thing which the Lord does command concerning the daughters of Zelophehad, saying, let them marry whom they think best. Only to the family of the tribe of their family shall they marry. So shall not the inheritance of the children of Israel remove from tribe to tribe. Every one of the children of Israel shall keep himself to the inheritance of the tribe of his fathers. And every daughter that possesses an inheritance in the tribe of the children of Israel shall be wife to one of the family of the tribe of her father. And the children of Israel shall enjoy every man the inheritance of his fathers. Neither shall the inheritance remove from one tribe to another. But every one of the tribes of the children of Israel shall keep himself to his own inheritance. Okay, notice the tribe of the sons of Joseph, plural here. Notice, okay, and recognize this tribe is one of the tribe, and sometimes and sometimes one of the Manasseh or Ephraim will sometimes be referred to as the tribe of Joseph. By the way, if you see that, look for which of the other one is mentioned, or if none of them, sometimes neither one of them are. It's just Joseph, and they'll say Levite instead in the list. Okay, and it's a reference to both of them collectively. So, so this tribe of the sons of Joseph. Now, concerning the daughters of Zelophehad. And remember, he's in particular one. Notice the family of the tribe of their father. All right, try to go further down than just the tribe level, okay? The family of the tribe of their father. Try to marry someone that they got married inside their own tribe, and preferably someone closely related. It was going to be geographically close. Because again, back to our map, they're down here. Okay, if they're in this tribe from way up here, they're not geographically close, okay? And so you got kind of a little bit of fragmentation, as it were, inside the tribe. Nova, say Nova, say Nova's up here, and then down here's McCur. Well, now you got some of the land of Nova down here in the land of McCur, and inside McCur, there's so on and so forth, as we looked at with the Zelophehad guy. Okay, so marry within the family of the father, keep it as close to the father's family as possible. That will keep you close geographically and keep this fragmentation. And remember, we talked about raising the older son. I mean, if a man died without any children, his son is brothers raising up seed for him. One of his brothers, and that brother, the first child, is named after the dead son, and then the rest are after their own. So you kind of perhaps you're gonna have that situation as well. Whoever marries one of these daughters of Zelophehad, that first son's going to get her inheritance, and it counts as if they were as if you know if they're given a genealogy as if they were Zelophehad's son. That the mother may not even be mentioned, but as if they were Zelophehad's son, and the rest of the children she bears will be counted as his. When his property gets divided up, they'll get that. Okay, they'll get portions of that. So that's what the Lord's saying to do. Now, the other thing I want to draw out to your attention, I'm sorry, I have to move back. That's super important. Let them marry whom they will think best. People get the impression in the Bible that everyone's treating their women like chattel, like medieval times. And we talked about how this heathen king, how this heathen king, the king of the Ammonites, perhaps perhaps Cosby's brother was one of these five sons we read that was killed with the Amorites. I'm sorry, the king of the Ammonite, not the darn it, Midianites, king of the Midianites. Okay, perhaps Cosby was one. Cosby, the daughter was perhaps brother's one of those. So she's agreeing to basically literally prostitute herself out to try to bring revenge on Israel from God in revenge for for Israel killing her brother when they killed the Amorites. If that was her brother. Well, the ideal here was this chattel was their daughters were theirs, and they could just use them for political gain or whatever as they saw fit. And they could say, well, I want to be alliance to that king. I want to be alliance to that king over there. And maybe he's 50 years old, but maybe he'll my daughter's she's not even grown really, 17. I'm gonna just marry her to that king, so he'll make an alliance with me. No consent to no asking the daughter about it at all. She has no say in the matter. And or more often, someone more of her own age to make these kind of alliances that wasn't common. They met on their wedding day. but or perhaps a prince, the son of another king, saw one who was going to perhaps the one that was going to succeed his father, the crown prince. He might just like one of the girls for that. No, she may despise him, but he likes her. And the father's like, you're marrying him because he wants to be on the good side of this guy because of whatever reason. They perhaps they have more money, or perhaps they have a better army and he needs defense, and he has whatever the case is, wants to make an alliance. Or even down at courtesans, who are often basically court prostitutes for all intents and purposes, and going to make his daughter be a courtesan to court favor, literally in the court of someone, by getting her, having her get, perhaps the guy's married, but she's going to be, as people would say today, a side chick, as mistress. And he tells her to do this. And the point is, the woman has no say in the matter, okay, whatsoever. Okay. Well, that's what the Bible's not advocating that at all. The only case for that occurs that I can think of off the top of my head is when a man's man dies, and one of his brothers has to raise up seed to his brother. It doesn't say if they like each other. The man, his former sister-in-law, except because they're doing a service for her husband, his brother. Okay, in raising up children. But other than that, that doesn't really there's this ideal of the father just says you're going to marry so because it helps me, is not in here. They can marry whom they think best. They have a say in this marriage. Yes, they have a small pool to choose from in this case, but they have a say in the matter. There's absolutely no truth to this ideal that women have no say in the matter. And I've heard men, men mostly, some Sabbath observing men, I'm going to say it that way, who basically had that idea about their daughters. Not that prostitute them out, but they were going to pick who they would marry. And I've known people who had nothing to do, who maybe didn't quite go that far, but they picked out a list of characteristics for their son-in-law, and they expect their daughter to fall in love with some of with those characteristics. Like maybe like my daughter's going to marry a doctor. Maybe she hasn't met a doctor she wants to marry. Maybe she's in love with a guy who treats her like a queen. I don't mean gives her silver and gold. I mean, but in the way he treats her with respect and dignity and so on and so forth. Who values her greatly. Who doesn't have much. Who maybe doesn't have any college education at all, but he'll work hard to take care of her. No one has a right to tell their children who to marry. They have to live with the people that they marry. This is one of the things, as I've mentioned before, it'd be easy if the rabbis got everything wrong, but occasionally they get something right, and this is one of them. That no one can tell you who to marry. You have to live with that person you marry the rest of your life. The only exception, of course, being, as I mentioned, or if God can tell you to marry because you agreed to enlist to do what he tells you, like Hosea, God told him who to marry, and it was somebody that caused him great trouble and harm, but it was for the purpose of God. But he agreed to let God use him for his purposes. But other than those rare exceptions, but just day to day, normal, unmarried person wants to marry another unmarried person, no one can tell you who to marry. It is up to you. You have to pick someone whom you think best. But you do have to pick someone often, and you do have a limited pool. But you don't have to just settle for anyone whom you think is best, whether you're a man or a woman. Now, but I said especially for the women out there, because there's that mentality of men that my daughter is someone I can use her to get in good with this other family that's richer or stronger or whatever the case is. You're not your father's pawn for his political or monetary or whatever gain. You have to live with him. You have to decide whom you're to marry, whom you think is best. It's what the Lord says. You know, and in their case, even command it. Well, let's see how they fulfilled that commandment. And even as the Lord, and we wrap up Numbers, really the entire book of Numbers here in Numbers 36, verses 10 through 13. As the Lord commanded Moses, so did the daughters of Zelophehad. For Malah, Tirzah, Hoglah, Milcah, Noah, the daughters of Zelophehad were married unto their father's brother's sons. And they married the families of the sons of Manasseh, the son of Joseph. And their inheritance remained in the tribe of the family of their father. These are the commandments and judgments the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses unto the children of Israel in the plains of Moab by Jordan near Jericho. Okay, notice it's the commandment of God. And that commandment, again, included whom they thought was best. Now, what they didn't have, the option was not to not get married. They're going to have to get married. They're going to have to marry someone close to their families. In this case, they picked their cousins to make that clear. This is their cousins. The Bible is not against cousin marriage, and nor does it cause harm, except maybe over a long term, it keeps happening. It does say you cannot marry your aunt, your uncle, your father, your mother, your half sibling, your full sibling. Okay, but it does not say you cannot marry your cousin. And plainly, they did, and that kept it close in the family. All those things God commanded, so they did have to marry. And and they could not be too picky. Whom they thought best out of the pool of candidates. You're never this whole ideal of they completely they're my other half, yada yada, all comes from idolatry. There are no perfect people. But there may be so much perfect for you to get married, but they're still gonna, as Paul said, if your marriage brings trouble, but he says I would spare you. That I would spare you from. Yeah, there's going to be collisions, there's going to be conflicts, so not getting married was not an option for them. The pool was limited to their tribe at the moat, but the family of their fathers, so their cousins, maybe second, third cousins, somewhere like that, and they married in very close. But they got to choose who they want to marry. Perhaps a little backwards from the standard. Perhaps they proposed to the guy, as it were, said, "Hey, I would like you to to marry me, to raise up seed for my father." And the guy, of course, had to agree as well. So it runs two ways. She chose them, but they chose her as well. And see, I'm going to leave you with that thought. The Lord chose us, but we had to choose him as well. And as I've shown before, who he chose who he called many, but few were chosen. He chose those who answered the call. If he's calling you, he's already expressed his willingness to choose you. But you have to choose him as well by answering the call. And he's not willing that any should perish, but all should come to the knowledge of the knowledge of the Lord into salvation. If you're hearing my voice, if you're wondering, yes, he's calling you. He's calling you to marry him, so to speak. The wife has these daughters when they agreed to marry their father's brothers, they came under they came under subjection to those men. They had to submit to them. They had to say, not my will, but your will be done. The Father's calling you. The calling you. The Son is calling you. He's calling you to be one of his brethren. He's the older brother. And you answer the call. You choose him by agreeing to do what he tells you to do, whatever it is. And in my case, I literally meant anything. And he told me to get married and told me who to marry. And I went on my only date, asked my wife to marry me, and we've been married 40 something years. He knows what he's doing. You can trust him. Until next week, shalom.